12-year-old exposes incredible truth about police abuse. You won't believe what happened next. Mia Thompson couldn't shake the image from her mind. The local police car rolling up, lights flashing as it confronted her best friend Jamal in the park. Jamal had been walking home, headphones in, when they stopped him, claiming he fit the description. Mia felt a tight coil of anger in her chest, even now the unfairness of it roiling, as her father often reminded her that respect came from family values. He believed in fairness, yet here was Jamal, unfairly treated. How could that be right? Did authority mean truth? Questions hammered at her thoughts, leaving her feeling more confused than ever. As she sat in her room, surrounded by schoolbooks and art supplies, the weight of what she had witnessed felt heavier with each ticking clock second. Should she speak up? Did she have the right to challenge the very system her father revered? Mia's heart raced as she considered digging deeper. Her fingers trembled over her notebook as she began to jot down ideas, wanting to untangle the mystery shrouded in the local police practices. She could feel her resolve strengthen, yet doubt crept in. What if she disturbed the calm of her small town? What if her family became targets too? The risk felt monumental. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Mia's determination flared with intensity. She had to know more. She started interviewing neighbors, talking to her favorite teacher, Mr. Lawson, who prodded her curiosity even further, fueling her desire to unveil the truth. Yet as bottles of courage poured out, fear clawed back. What if the police came after her? What if her father lost customers or respect? Tension danced in her veins, pumping adrenaline and anxiety. Still, Jamal's face haunted her thoughts, his eyes wide with a mix of confusion and fear. The town hall meeting loomed closer, a sea of townsfolk preparing to gather, and Mia could feel the anxiety crackling in the air like a summer storm ready to burst. What if she was wrong? What if the revelations she had unearthed were simply a misunderstanding? The idea of speaking out grew heavier, the stakes higher. As the day approached, she paced her bedroom, imagining the officials at the front, their demeanors dismissive, how ruthless they could be. But then an image of Jamal's unjust fear washed over her, and she steeled herself. Turning away from the cozy comforts of childhood, Mia was about to step into murky waters. The whisper of her grandmother's past chimed dangerously, an echo that bound them in a twisted thread of injustice yet unexplored. At that moment, as she stood at the precipice of something larger than herself, Mia felt the growing tension, a daunting challenge of right versus wrong converging at her feet. Would she take the leap or step back into the safety of childhood ignorance? The path ahead was murky, potent, and perilous. She had to decide, and time was running out. Mia woke the following morning, the weight of the town hall meeting pressing heavily on her chest like a stone. Sunlight streamed through her window, illuminating the scattered notes she'd scribbled in the dead of night. Each one contained a fragment of the raw fear and determination she struggled to balance. She could still hear her heartbeat echoing in her ears, matching the urgency coursing through her veins. Sitting up in bed, however, presented an unsettling thought. What if no one believed her? What if the community preferred to look away rather than confront uncomfortable truths? A flicker of doubt threatened to extinguish her resolve, but she shoved it back. Mia had uncovered enough information to warrant attention, her recent discussions with Mr. Lawson fueling her senses. They brainstormed ways to frame her presentation, pulling from historical contexts and current events to lay a foundation grounded in evidence rather than hearsay. Yet, despite the clarity she exhibited in planning, that familiar knot of fear kept tightening. She could visualize the rows of locals whispering and pointing, their skepticism tangible, the police officers seated defiantly among them in their crisp uniforms. Would they roll their eyes, shrug it off as childish naivety? Or worse, would they retaliate? Pacing around her room, Mia picked up a soft brush and let her thoughts flow onto the sketchbook before her. A swirling mass of muted colors echoed her emotional turmoil, each stroke a silent plea for justice. Art had always provided her solace, a refuge away from reality. But today, she noticed something new. A focal point began to emerge from the chaos. A figure, a young girl clutching a megaphone, fighting against a wall of darkness. At that moment, Mia grasped a revelation: this story could be hers. The girl in her drawing wasn't just a reflection of her fears, she embodied her fight. Staring into the sketch, Mia felt her confidence surge. She was powerful in her vulnerability. Maybe this presentation wasn't merely about exposing others but about finding her own voice amidst a cacophony of doubt. Emboldened, she grabbed her notebook, jotting down specifics of her planned speech. The data she gathered: incidents of police stops, statistics on racial profiling, and stories from her neighbors. Mia infused honesty into her words, wanting to transcend fear and reach the hearts of those who would listen. She longed for empathy where indifference had reigned supreme. That afternoon, the anxiety in the air thickened as her family prepared for the evening's event. Her father, typically a steadfast anchor in her life, seemed to sense her conflict. He paused at the threshold of her doorway, his brow furrowed. "Mia, are you sure about this? It could change everything," he warned gently. His words settled heavily, interlacing concern with protective instincts. But as she glanced back at her drawing, the girl still clutched that megaphone with determination undeterred. "I have to do this, Dad. For Jamal." "For everyone," she replied, her voice firm yet laced with vulnerability. She was no longer merely a girl in a town, she was becoming a champion for a narrative that needed to be told. The shadows outside began to deepen as the evening approached. Mia's heart thudded like a drum roll, each beat a countdown to the confrontation that awaited her. The moment of truth was indeed drawing closer. Would she stand and deliver, or falter under the weight of consequence? As she prepared herself, a chilling realization washed over her: it was not just the voice of an innocent child that she would project, but a wave of determination ready to expose deeper societal truths. And perhaps it was time she confronted a certain police officer who was known for his confrontational tactics. He had just stepped out into the faded twilight, unaware that tonight, she planned to seek the ultimate truth about their town. Mia could feel her pulse quickening as twilight descended, casting shadows across her small town. Each flicker of movement outside her window fed her nerves as she gathered her materials for the impending town hall meeting. Her heart raced at the thought of what lay ahead, yet there was a steely resolve anchoring her thoughts. The responsibility weighed heavily on her, echoing back to her father's words. Could this really change everything? With her notebook in one hand and a heavy-duty flashlight in the other, Mia stepped outside. The night air was cool against her skin, a stark contrast to the warmth of her room where she had prepared. She took a deep breath, inviting the crispness to sweep away her fears. Her mind was made up: this was not solely about her voice but about every silent scream that had echoed within their community. Drowning in indifference, she pushed through the front door, hesitating for just a moment as she locked eyes with her dad, who stood beneath the porch light, worry etched across his face. Silent words passed between them, understanding and apprehension mingled as he nodded slightly, giving her permission. As she walked toward the town hall, the streets seemed quieter, almost conspiratorial. The anticipatory buzz of conversations wafted in her direction, blending with the rhythmic chirping of crickets. What would she encounter inside? Would she be met with support or hostility? This mystery clung to her like a second skin, forcing her to confront her reality. She couldn't turn back now. Opening the heavy wooden doors of the town hall, Mia was met with a wave of sound: voices, laughter, murmurs. The atmosphere was thick with a mix of community spirit and trepidation, people catching up after long days, unaware of the tension that simmered just beneath the surface. She could feel the weight of those stares, the curious glances darting her way as she scanned the familiar faces. She positioned herself at the back of the room, taking a moment to center herself. Encouraged by the figures in her artwork, she imagined herself as that girl with the megaphone, poised against the wall of darkness. Drawing inspiration from her art, she tried to channel the strength from the figure she had created. Either she was going to find her voice tonight, or the silence would smother the very essence of her resolve. Mia's eyes caught a glimpse of Officer Reynolds, an imposing presence among the audience. She had heard unsettling stories about his past actions from neighbors, stories that spoke of intimidation and aggressive tactics. The very idea of confronting him felt like grasping at a live wire, thrilling and terrifying. As she neared the podium, she wrestled with the weight of her thoughts, knowing this moment could either shatter her identity or solidify it. She had practiced the numbers, rehearsed the emotional beats of her speech, but standing just feet away from the microphone sent her stomach swirling. The room hushed as the meeting was called to order. For a fleeting second, her mind raced to where she could hide, but she crushed the thought under her determination. The truth she carried needed to be shared, even if it meant sacrificing her semblance of comfort. When she finally stepped forward, the floor felt both foreign and familiar under her feet. A sense of electricity coursed through her veins as she approached the microphone, her heart thudding a rapid cadence. It was now or never. The room waited. Her moment hung precariously, filled with potential and risk. As she cleared her throat, one singular idea crystallized in her mind. This was not merely an act of rebellion, it was her emergence into a world where her voice could drive change. These truths could inspire action, or ignite a storm. Mia took a deep breath and began to speak, her voice trembling yet strong. Tonight, I would like to share some hard truths about our community. She locked eyes with Officer Reynolds, steeling herself for whatever storm would follow. The weight of her decision settled like a shield, preparing her for the confrontation of her young life. What would the room's reaction be to her revelations? Would she push through the walls of indifference, or would fear once again take the front seat? The uncertainty burned in her chest, fueling her determination and urging her forward. Mia's voice resonated in the hushed hall, each syllable echoing against the ancient walls like a deliberate strike against complacency. With every word, she felt a certain power she hadn't realized she possessed, like the embers of a fire igniting within her. The crowd shifted, tension palpable, yet she pressed on, driven by the warmth of her growing certainty. Statistics show that complaints about excessive force have risen by over 50% in the past year alone, she stated, the tremor in her voice fading, replaced by a steadiness she hadn't anticipated. Many of those complaints have been buried under layers of silence, yet we must ask ourselves why. We can no longer allow fear to dictate our relationship with those who are meant to protect us. This was the moment she had envisioned, where the stories she had heard from friends and neighbors would break free from whispers into the open. The fear, remorse, and sadness surged through her, reflected in the anxious expressions of the onlookers. It was a wave washing over them, demanding attention, demanding accountability. Officer Reynolds' presence loomed larger as Mia spoke, his eyes narrowing into a calculating glare. She could feel the heat radiating from his gaze, but something within her shifted. Instead of retreating under the weight of his scrutiny, she locked her eyes on him, refusing to let his intimidation disrupt her flow. With each fact she presented, she could sense the room responding, a ripple of disbelief mixed with curiosity sparked among the audience. She shared stories of Golden Hill apartments where residents had faced unnecessary aggression, the anguish of families silenced by fear. The references to real lives added weight to her presentation, and with each name she uttered, she wove a tapestry of humanity that was hard to ignore. As Mia launched into her own experience, she noticed parents pulling their children closer, their faces reflecting a growing acknowledgement of the truth she was sharing. I've lived through it, she said, her voice gaining volume and authority. I've watched my friends fear the very badge that is supposed to keep us safe. I was afraid too. But I understand now that if I remain silent, nothing will change. She could feel that same discontent boiling within her, morphing into resolve. Each emission of emotion steered her closer to her goal, allowing her vulnerability to transform into strength. This was not merely about confrontation, this was about elevating a shared purpose. Yet, the confrontation was not exclusive to her findings but was positively palpable with Officer Reynolds, who, now visibly irritated, shifted in his seat. A murmured conversation rippled through the room, and she could feel the tide turning. It fueled her energy, igniting the audience's own frustrations, but even as she felt that surge of power, Mia grappled with an undercurrent of fear. Was it enough? Would her presentation make a dent in the entrenched silence of the town? She could only hope. With determined resolve, she reached the final point of her speech. We owe it to ourselves to confront these issues head-on. We owe it to our children and our future. It's time we hold our representatives accountable. The applause began almost immediately, a hesitant ripple, growing louder, punctuated by shouts of agreement. It was a reaction she had hoped for, yet it startled her, disbelief momentarily overshadowing her triumph. Then, the ominous silence followed, those lurking doubts creeping back in. Officer Reynolds stood, his face a mask of irritation. I think you need to understand what you're suggesting. His words sliced through the applause, an attempt to reclaim authority, and Mia felt the room shift again, tension thickening as fear mingled with excitement. In that moment of unpredictable encounter, her heart raced. She now faced not only the reckoning with the audience's sentiments but also the potential repercussions of what she had just unleashed. The stakes climbed higher as she braced herself for the confrontation looming ahead. Would she stand steady against his rebuke, or would the weight of imposed fear crush the flicker of courage that had ignited within? As they met gazes, unyielding in their own ways, Mia realized with daunting clarity the next phase of her journey had only just begun, and she could feel the tremors of her changing world shift once again beneath her feet. How far would she be willing to go for the truth? What price would she have to pay? Mia felt the intensity of the room as Officer Reynolds's gaze pinned her in place. The spark inside her pulsated, battling the uncertainty now resurfacing. She had crossed an invisible threshold into a realm where accountability took precedence over fear. The crowd, initially cheering, now shifted uneasily, caught between admiration for her bravery and dread for the backlash that might follow. You must understand, Reynolds continued, his voice cutting through the tension with the sharpness of a blade. What you're suggesting implies chaos, a rebellion. Are you ready to be the face of that? The weight of his question hung heavily, filling the air with unspoken implications. Would she assume the role of unlikely crusader, risking everything she held dear? A fight ignited within her, not solely against him, but also against the shadow of doubt creeping into her consciousness. She had unearthed truths, now it was time to defend them. I'm not suggesting chaos, I'm suggesting clarity, Mia replied, her voice steadier than before as she found her center amidst the conflict. If we cannot discuss these issues, how can we expect change? Each word she spoke fortified the threshold of courage she was building, helping her to stay rooted against the storm swirling around her. As the room fell silent once again, she took a deep breath, drawing strength from the collective vulnerability she had witnessed in the audience. Their faces lingered in her mind, those of families longing for safety and justice. They were depending on her now, and she would not let them down. Reynolds leaned forward slightly, his tone shifting to barely concealed intimidation. Your naivete will be your downfall, child. There are consequences to challenging authority. With every new volley in this verbal spar, Mia felt an internal shift. Each articulation of his threat sparked an instinctual rebellion within her. What hadn't he considered about her resilience? She was not only a voice, she was proof that change could arise from the most fragile of places. This realization twisted the fear that once confined her, evolving it into resolve. What had once felt crippling now became a potent motivator. I'm not here to incite chaos, she reiterated, this time with a newfound vigor. I am here to give a voice to the voiceless. When I look into the eyes of my neighbors, I see their suffering. I choose to stand for them, to fight for a future free from violence, and I won't back down. The clarity of her intent illuminated the fog of doubt around her, each word further entwining her resolve to confront the truth. Even when it was uncomfortable, the audience began murmuring once more, an undercurrent building against Reynolds' authority. She could feel the energy shifting, her words resonating more powerfully than even she had anticipated. Perhaps fear had wrapped itself around the town for too long, and now it sought to unravel. As Reynolds stood speechless, the weight of his societal expectations collapsing upon him, she recognized a turning point, a moment ripe with potential not only for her but for the whole community. If her voice could spark this reaction, what more could unfold if she leaned into her newfound strength? Mia felt the edges of excitement creeping in, tinged with the lingering aftertaste of fear. She could sense the collective heartbeat of those who had gathered, and for once, they were aligned in purpose. Let us discuss the policies, the reforms we need, she continued, feeling emboldened. I am ready to be a part of that dialogue, but I need you to join me. Officer Reynolds' expression soured, and for a fleeting moment, Mia saw the predator underneath the facade of authority. Would he retaliate? How far would he go to maintain the status quo? We're not finished here, he replied, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his uncertainty. As the crowd stirred, Mia realized the confrontation had only ignited further inquiry and unrest. There was still much to unravel and even more to be discovered. She had stirred the pot, now she needed to navigate its increasingly turbulent waters. How would she survive the aftermath of her confrontation? What consequences awaited her as she delved deeper into this struggle for accountability? The answers loomed like shadows, beckoning her into the unknown, where courage and fear would continue to dance perilously close. Mia walked away from the confrontation with Reynolds, her heart racing as the adrenaline of her words still coursed through her veins. As she stepped into the quiet after the storm, the world around her felt amplified: the rustling of leaves, the distant chatter of digesting thoughts, the shuffling of feet retreating into the unknown. Each sound marked a threshold crossed, signaling a new chapter unfolding in her life, yet the weight of uncertainty pressed on her. The night air was cool against her flushed cheeks, a stark contrast to the heat of the moment inside. She had ignited something, perhaps a spark, but how could she nurture it into a flame? The room had felt charged, alive with potential, but now alone, the resonant silence echoed her doubts. Had she really found her voice, or was this merely a fleeting moment of courage? The remnants of her confrontation replayed in her mind, not only words exchanged but the emotional currents that shifted around her. Back in her room, surrounded by walls adorned with vibrant posters urging change, she felt a stark dissonance between her dreams and reality. A small desk lay cluttered with half-empty notebooks filled with sketches of ideas and fervent manifestos. She had spent hours conjuring blueprints for a better community, but were they merely fanciful scribbles? Mia slumped into her chair, staring blankly at the pages as if they held answers. Moments of clarity and turmoil had shaped her resolve, yet the lingering sense of vulnerability made her hesitate. She penned a few words, her writing now a vessel for both hope and fear, stitching together fragments of her idealism with strands of reality. "Strength lies in vulnerability," she murmured under her breath, the phrase feeling foreign yet powerfully true. Still, the shadow of potential repercussions loomed large. What if Reynolds' threat materialized, transforming her aspirations into targets? The uncertainty gnawed at the edges of her newfound courage, twisting it into anxiety. She had stepped up, but did she possess the fortitude to withstand the fallout? Sinking deep into her thoughts, Mia discerned something compelling surfacing within her, a fierce determination to not only confront her fears but to fully harness them. What she had initially perceived as a weakness now emerged as a catalyst for her evolution. She wished for change, meaningful and impactful, but how could she enact it without a well-defined strategy? Flipping through her notebooks, a realization struck her: she didn't have to be alone in this. She could weave a network of allies, broaden her voice, and strengthen her resolve with their support. Mia began sketching a plan, outlining the vision she wanted to share: community forums, town hall discussions, open dialogue strategically designed to encourage collaborative conversations about the change she envisioned. Her vulnerabilities were no longer shackles, they would be the very foundation of a movement fueled by collective insight. The flickering street lamp outside her window caught her eye as it cast shadows on her wall. Each flicker mirrored her internal awakening, it embodied the confrontation of darkness with light. Mia understood she could transcend fear by nurturing her voice and harnessing her spirit. What began as reactive defiance was now morphing into purposeful activism, transforming her life beyond the singular moment of fear. With renewed fervor, she grabbed her phone. Who could she reach out to? Whispers of support filled her mind: friends, neighbors, teachers, each with the potential to bolster her cause. She knew from her confrontation that transparency would disarm fear, making the impossible tangible, but a daunting realization crept in: Reynolds would not sit idly as she gathered momentum. What kind of retaliation should she expect? The time had come to face not just her fears, but the true antagonism that lay ahead. Mia's pulse quickened again, but this time, it was not from fear. It was anticipation for the struggle between courage and authority that beckoned her. She had ignited a fire. But would it burn bright enough to illuminate the shadows and help her navigate the unknown? As she sent the messages, she pondered the responses she might receive, mingling hope with anxiety. Could this be the beginning of something transformative, or would it devolve into a battleground against Reynolds' authority? One thing was clear: she was no longer merely an observer, she was a player ready to shape her destiny. How would her newfound purpose hold up against the fierce opposition brewing in the shadows? The answers hovered just out of reach, teasing her to dive deeper into the unfolding narrative of her life. As dawn broke, Mia awoke with a sense of urgency. Each ray of sunlight slicing through her window felt like an invitation, a prompt to embrace the day and the possibilities it brought. Thoughts of the night before clung to her consciousness, fueling a new resolve. She sensed she was on the verge of something monumental, but the enormity of taking action reminded her that the stakes were high. A knock at her bedroom door snapped her out of her reverie. It was her mother, peeking in with a concerned look. "You okay, Mia?" You looked restless last night. I'm fine, Mom, she replied, trying to keep her tone light. But the truth lingered beneath her calm facade. Just beneath the surface, apprehension churned. What if her efforts would lead to confrontation, threats, or worse? Once her mother left, Mia sat at her small desk, finger hovering over her smartphone. How could she articulate her vision to others? It was no longer enough to simply share her thoughts, she needed to galvanize those around her. But how to begin? What words would resonate? Diving into her notes, she flipped through pages filled with colorful margins and aggressive doodles that mirrored her anguish and aspirations. The sketches captured her imagination, they were kaleidoscopes of persistence, empathy, and the fine line between rebellion and respectability. Fueling her newfound purpose, she began to devise an outline for a gathering people who could understand her message, share her frustrations, and possibly collaborate on a vision moving forward. She drafted open invitations, carefully choosing her words. Let us discuss how we can embrace change in our community. The phrases flowed from her fingertips, vibrant and full of passion. But with each sentence, doubt seeped in. Would it even matter? Would they care? The potential for failure loomed large, threatening to extinguish the flame she had barely ignited. Determination surged as she thought of Reynolds' looming presence. She no longer wanted to be a pawn in someone else's game. The idea of cowering under oppressive authority was unbearable. But a crucial question plagued her: how to balance her call for activism with the very real consequences of standing up against a powerful individual. Creating the invitation was one step, but she knew there was more to consider. Who would attend? She quickly jotted down names of friends, acquaintances, and allies she hoped would want to join her cause. With each name, memories surfaced, moments of shared fear, laughter, and even minor victories against the fabric of systemic norms that made them feel small. As she pressed send on the messages, an indefinable tension tied her stomach into knots. Each notification to her phone was like a small wave crashing against her resolve. Some replies were immediate but lukewarm, others expressed excitement, a couple reflected hesitance that twisted inside her, a remnant doubt creeping back in. As the day wore on, she felt conflicted. Yes, the flame sparked, but was she ready to embrace the inferno it could become? A walk outside was warranted. Mia needed to shake off the tightness coiling around her heart. The world, however, felt different. The usual morning hum of activity now seemed laden with expectation. The shadows of uncertainty loomed larger with every step she took down the street, as if Reynolds' influence had spilled beyond the confines of her own mind and into her surroundings. Crossing paths with old friends sparked a flicker of heartening familiarity. Each smile exchanged served as a reminder, she wasn't alone in this. Yet, could she summon them to take a stand alongside her? The air was heavy with something intoxicating, lingering between despair and the hope of rebellion. As the day drew to a close, Mia sat with the palpable sensation of the world shifting beneath her feet. The upcoming conversations could break ground or shatter dreams. The question of whether she'd ascend as a beacon of change or fall victim to intimidation lingered in the back of her mind. The answer loomed in the uncertain distances ahead, arousing both a grappling fear and an exhilarating thrill. Who would come to her meeting, and would they stand united against Reynolds and his authority? The real confrontation was about to begin, and with it, a revelation awaited, one that would test her resilience and push her even further into the depths of her own emerging identity. Mia spent the night twisting and turning in bed, thoughts colliding like distant thunder, shaking the foundation of her confidence. As the clock ticked closer to the hour of her gathering, the world felt muted, the anticipation almost palpable. She was tired of feeling like a bystander in her own life. Today was the day she would take her first step onto the battlefield of change. She dressed deliberately, choosing colors that mirrored her intent, strong, yet soft. When she arrived at the meeting place, a small corner of the park she frequented as a child, there was a comforting familiarity amidst the weight of uncertainty. The rustling leaves seemed alive with whispers of encouragement, and in that moment, she allowed a flicker of optimism to kindle within her. Yet, with each passing moment, nervousness threatened to engulf her. What would she say? How could she ignite the same spark that had lit within herself? Could she craft a rallying cry that would resonate? As she paced along the worn path, every footfall echoed her doubts. The first few attendees arrived, a couple of friends and some classmates. They exchanged small talk, laughter seeping in through the cracks of her anxiety. Mia seized the moment. Thanks for coming, guys, she began, her voice steadying. I know this may seem casual, but I want to talk about something serious, something that affects all of us. Their attentiveness shifted as she spoke about Reynolds and the oppressive grip of authority he held over their lives. With each word, she could almost feel the weight of their shared experiences pressing against the air, pulling them closer. Remember the incident last month? The neighborhood meeting? She asked, her heart racing. Faces turned solemn as memories surfaced. We need to address how these situations affect us. She laid out her ideas clearly, carefully articulating her frustrations with boldness she didn't know she possessed. Could this be her hidden talent, a gift for rallying support, perhaps even sparking imagination among her peers? Yet as she spoke, glimmers of self-doubt flickered anew. What if they didn't see it the way she did? What if this turned into a futile exercise, a disappointing venture that didn't shift any viewpoints? But the sincerity in their nods recharged her resolve. They were listening. They cared. In a moment of profound clarity, she realized that her fear of confrontation had been paralyzed by a deeper yearning for progress. It wasn't merely about challenging Reynolds, it was about asserting her existence and rights, a defiance against being rendered invisible. It hit her that each word, each assertion carried weight, had the potential to alter the course of the discussion, not just for herself, but for her friends too. As she wrapped up her thoughts, feeling a shared commitment form in the air, someone asked, "What's our next step?" Mia felt her pulse quicken. A wave of exhilaration rushed through her as she realized they had reached a turning point. Together, they were no longer isolated individuals, they had become a collective, a burgeoning force. However, the reality of Reynolds still loomed ominously in her mind. There would be repercussions, scrutiny should they push too hard. Engaging in a confrontation was a bold gambit. Failure could dismantle everything she and her friends had begun to cultivate, but the fear of stagnation was now more potent than the fear of intimidation. She would not let Reynolds' grip on their futures dictate the course of their lives. The choice was made. Stepping toward confrontation was undeniable. Just as they began hashing out plans for their next meeting, a sharp shout resonated across the park, turning heads. Tension crackled in the air like static electricity. The origins of that voice sent a chill down her spine as memories of recent altercations flooded back. Was this Reynolds? The confrontation was looming closer than she had imagined, and within that moment, Mia stood at the precipice of everything she had fought for, with the eyes of her friends upon her, ready for the unfathomable challenge. Ahead, how would she navigate this unexpected obstacle? In this crucial hour, the path ahead now felt even more hazardous, but she recognized that it could also spark the boldest changes her community desperately needed. Mia's heart thundered in her chest as she turned toward the source of the shout, her mind racing with possibilities. Was Reynolds out there? A confrontation seemed inevitable, yet the doubt she had fought against moments ago crept back in, threatening to overshadow the newfound sense of agency she had begun to embrace. The group around her quieted, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Mia felt the weight of their stares, their unspoken questions hanging heavily in the air. Should she stand her ground? Or should she retreat from the encroaching tension? But retreating would mean allowing Reynolds to dominate the narrative once more, an idea that felt increasingly intolerable. Suddenly, Reynolds appeared through a thicket, flanked by a couple of his ever-loyal supporters. His expression was a mixture of scorn and amusement, and he cast a disdainful glance toward Mia's gathering. What is this, a little social hour? I hope you aren't trying to talk about me, kids. I've got more important things to do than entertain your fantasies. Mia's stomach twisted as he approached. The confrontation she anticipated had arrived. The fear of speaking her truth collided with her determination to stand firm. In this moment, she felt the difference within herself. A confrontation didn't have to mean chaos, it could also be a catalyst for clarity and strength. Actually, Reynolds, she replied, her voice steadier than she expected, we are talking about serious issues. Your actions have consequences. The words felt foreign yet exhilarating as they escaped her lips, a testament to the courage she had begun to cultivate. He laughed, a sharp, mocking sound that reverberated through the park. Your little complaints? Listen, I run this town. Your voices don't mean a thing. I've seen too many of your kind try to make waves, they always wash back to shore. Don't waste my time. The laughter of his followers echoed around him, and Mia's heart sank, but she refused to succumb to the overwhelming tide of discouragement.
She studied her friends, their faces brimming with nervous energy but unwavering belief in her. This wasn't just about her, this was about them. All the words they had shared earlier flooded her thoughts, providing a buoyancy amid the hostility. "Maybe you run this town, but that doesn't make us powerless," she asserted, surprising even herself with the confidence bursting forth. "We want to make a change, and we will. You can't silence us." The energy shifted, and her friends shifted closer, forming a protective circle around her, their solidarity banding together against the hostility. Reynolds' expression faltered for the briefest moment. Had she truly shaken him? But soon enough, his arrogance returned. "You think you can challenge me? You'll regret this, trust me." With one last scornful smile, he turned to leave, his supporters trailing behind him, but not before Mia caught a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. As the tension slowly dissipated, Mia felt a rush of exhilaration. Although the confrontation wasn't a victory in a traditional sense, she saw the impact of her words reflected in the faces of her friends. They breathed together, their collective firm will a burgeoning fortress against the oppressive atmosphere Reynolds embodied. "Okay, so what's next?" one of her friends asked, eagerness replacing trepidation. Mia's heart raced with a mix of excitement and dread. She sensed something new surging within her, an urgency to not only respond but to strategize a path forward. They began discussing ideas, ways to bring awareness to their situation, strategies for gathering more support, finding allies who could lend credence to their frustrations. With each suggestion tossed into the air, Mia felt her resolve strengthen. The promise of change hung tantalizingly close, yet beneath the thrill of newfound determination lingered an unsettling question: how would Reynolds retaliate? The volatility of their confrontation loomed ominously, hinting at the darker possibilities that lay ahead. As they finalized their plans, a tension sparked in her chest. The stakes had become personal, directly challenging her courage and convictions. The moment was drawing closer when she might need to face Reynolds again, only this time, it would mean standing not just for herself, but as a symbol of defiance. What rapid shifts might this next confrontation bring, not only for her but for those who had rallied behind her? The coming days would undoubtedly test her resilience, pushing her toward the ultimate reckoning that would determine both her growth and their community's fate. The true battle had just begun. Mia awoke to a new day, the sun pouring into her room like liquid gold. The events of the previous night had both shaken and awakened her. They had ignited a flame that she could not ignore, a relentless urge to push forward against the forces of complacency and oppression. Standing at the threshold of a momentous change, she had found her voice, but it was now time to translate that voice into action, sustainable action. Determined, Mia settled into her desk, her crafting space charged with purpose. She pulled out her notes and began organizing her ideas, envisioning a community forum to address the concerns that everyone had when it came to authority, an open platform where residents could speak freely, share stories, and seek solutions. She envisioned a night where information was exchanged and perspectives challenged, dialogue illuminating the corners of ignorance that had long shrouded their town. The more she planned, the more confidence surged within her. She titled her event Voices for Change, deliberately choosing a name that conveyed unity in action. She walked around the community where earlier she had been fearful. Now, a sense of communion hummed around her. Speaking to friends, neighbors, and mentors, soliciting support, and sharing her vision, Mia felt the rush of communal validation. Each conversation further solidified her resolve. She was not a solitary voice anymore, she was part of a powerful network echoing the cry for justice, for accountability, for change. Her gathering took shape, and as the date approached, buzz began to ripple through the community. Flyers she created adorned local cafes and bulletin boards, each printed detail a step toward solidifying her purpose. Meanwhile, her original fear of Officer Reynolds loomed over her thoughts, but she recognized this feeling as a challenge, not a deterrent. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that the confrontation was not about her ego, it was about the collective community taking a stand. As she approached the night of her forum, Mia felt a wave of excitement mixed with apprehension. The venue, a local community center, filled quickly with familiar faces, each person contributing to her transformative experience. There was a distinguishing mark of solidarity in the air. Friends she recognized stood shoulder to shoulder with strangers, all sharing the desire for accountability and change. When Mia stepped onto the makeshift stage, looking out at the audience, she could feel her stomach fluttering, but this time it was filled with anticipation rather than fear. Her heart beat steadily as she cleared her throat and began,
thank you all for being here tonight. We have gathered not just to share our frustrations but to engage in an essential dialogue for change. Each interaction was met with nodding heads, murmurs of agreement, and a tangible sense of community growing palpable as she moved through the evening. Stories unfolded, voices trembling yet powerful, narratives that had long been silenced by fear. Mia presented data, drawing from her research about police activity and community impacts, but new statistics alone were not enough. She invoked personal accounts that she had gathered over the weeks, weaving them seamlessly into her presentation. Each testimony served to punctuate the reality that they were not alone in this struggle. Mia felt the weight of the room's energy each time she brought forth another brave person willing to share, reinforcing their collective narrative. Anyone can be a voice for change, she asserted passionately. And tonight, we are all coming together to hold each other accountable and to call for a fairer future. The evening culminated in spontaneous applause. Her convictions had met open ears, her voice resonating like a rallying cry. The atmosphere was charged, and she could feel the energy shift as people began discussing actionable next steps, not drawn into fear, but motivated by the strength of their community. Days later, as Mia walked the once quiet streets of her town, she felt different. The specter of fear, embodied by Officer Reynolds, had transformed into an opportunity for dialogue. Conversations sprang up even in the grocery store and down the avenues, where residents began voicing their concerns more overtly. Mia recognized her impact. She had given them a language, a movement, a chance to reclaim their voice. She had faced her fears, and those fears transformed into empowerment, a community no longer silenced. Mia stepped back into her room, overwhelmed by the pride nestled within her. She was not just a passive observer in her life, she had evolved into an active participant, a leader, a force of change. The journey forward was clear, and with it came a solid confidence in her ability to inspire others. Mia Thompson had proven herself capable of enacting change and reclaiming her voice. It was time for everyone to do the same. Now is the moment to act. You need to subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep us going. Comment your reactions and theories about Mia's transformative journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. The truth is calling.